Mr. President, the Senate is a great place, and the honor to be able to speak here is a great honor. Whether you're discussing your belief on an issue of major importance, honoring a friend, or on rare occasions, but all too often when you get to be my age, pay tribute to somebody who's given so much and passed away. Such has happened in my state this past Monday on the 16th of April when John A. Williams died, 74 years old. John Williams is a giant in every way in our state. He's a giant entrepreneur. He founded two great companies, one of them Post Properties, the largest apartment REIT on the New York Stock Exchange. Started in 1993, built it to all new heights. Most recently, a few years ago, he started PAC, Preferred Apartment Communities, a REIT also, and has done the same with it, employing thousands of people, building thousands of units of housing for Americans. And he set the pace in housing in his career. I don't know how many of you have noticed in the suburbs of most major cities today, but office parks and apartment complexes of any size now are some of the most beautifully landscaped places you have in your community. But 30 years ago, nobody planted a stick, nobody planted a shrub, nobody planted a flower. John Williams became the largest importer of Holland bulbs in the United States of America. And every spring, tulips blossomed on every Post Properties apartment building. In fact, he changed the advertising mode for apartments from, instead of calling them apartments, he called them apartment homes, because he wanted his apartments, although rental units, be looked upon by the people that live there as their home. He sold that concept and built that concept and replicated it over and over, and it became the standard in Georgia. And I've traveled the country, and it's the standard all over the country in terms of apartment housing and landscaping for major commercial properties. So he was a great entrepreneur, building two great companies and helping thousands of other people in many other ways to build their companies. A great father, a great husband, a great family man. His wife, Nancy, a wonderful first lady in our community. Parker, Sarah Brooke, and Jay, his children, all great contributors to our community. All knew how lucky they were to have such a great father. He's a great sportsman. When I say a great sportsman, I mean a great sportsman. He built Ranger, a replica of the 1937 America's Cup winner Ranger, one of the biggest yachts in the world, and sailed the world on that yacht and won races all around. But also a sportsman, he was a minority owner of the Atlanta Falcons and invested with Arthur Blank in the Atlanta Falcons, but ultimately almost got to the Super Bowl. They got to the Super Bowl, they just couldn't finish the drill with the Patriots. So one day we're going to figure out a way to do that, and I hope in memory of John we'll be able to do it for him. A giant community man. Who have you ever heard of in your lifetime that in the same lifetime was president of two different competing chambers of commerce next door to each other? He was twice the president of the Cobb County Chamber of Commerce while running Post Properties in packed communities, while doing all the things he did with his family, while racing his boat, while owning the Falcons. He built two great chambers of commerce and sought others to come to the communities where he was prospering and build their businesses. And then he came in and went to be president of the Atlanta Chamber of Commerce. Atlanta and Cobb County chambers are the 1 and 2 largest chambers in our state. Instead of having them fighting each other, John brought them together. He was a builder, he was a giant, but he was also a broker of common interest. A broker of common interest. He found the good in every opportunity and tried to sell the good and forget about the bad. He tried to bring out the best in everybody. And I never made a deal with John Williams or saw a deal that he had made. I never saw anybody leave the closing table that didn't feel good. His knack was to be sure that if you left the closing table and you had a check, you felt good about it, and if you had just written a check, you felt good about it. He wasn't a lose-win person, he was a win-win person. And that's why he was such a great businessman and such a great entrepreneur. He's a great friend and a giant of a friend to me. I met him 50 years ago next month. This may sound funny, but it's a great story. He worked for the Georgia Power Company. I worked for a small real estate company called Northside Realty Associates. Our two first jobs, his with Georgia Power and mine with Northside, were to hold open the Total Electric House of the Year in 1967, which meant we drew the last straw, and every night from 6 p.m. until 9 p.m. we held those houses open in hopes that somebody would come to look at them. And the electric utilities hoped that somebody would build a total electric house. It was a marketing trick. It was the first time they'd ever done it, and we enjoyed doing it, and I got to know John. And I remember the nights John talked about what he wanted to be and how he wanted to build companies and how he wanted to be an entrepreneur and how he wanted to be a real estate developer and how he wanted to make things better. We got to be good friends. In fact, I sold him a 4-acre piece of land where he built a house that he lived in for years before he built the home he's in today. Participated in other real estate transactions that he did, helped him with some of the properties that he put together, and always found him to be the win-win guy. He was my friend, he was my supporter, he was my confidant, he was also my greatest critic. Every politician in America should be lucky enough to have a John Williams, because John will tell you what you want to hear, but he tells you what you don't want to hear. When you're on the wrong track, he'd straighten you out. Sure, he could write checks all day long, but you know, Pat, Mr. President, and I know it's not just the checks that they write, it's the advice that they give, and it's the passions that they have. And when you find somebody that has a passion for their family, passion for building businesses, passion for their community, passion for everything that's good about America, you found somebody you want to keep close to you. And for 50 years, I stayed close to John Williams. When I got the news shortly before I boarded a plane on Monday to come up here, I started crying. That's how close he was to me, but so did everybody else that I ran into that day or have talked to on the phone since calling back home. Everybody misses John and was shocked by his going. But realizing the troubles that he had, the difficulties that he'd had in recent years, back surgeries and things of that nature, and then realizing, like all of us do at that age, when you're 74, which I am, you know, time's running out, you just don't know how fast it's running out, but it's a good example of how you always want to be ready whenever that day comes and know the legacy you left was a better legacy than the one you inherited. John was a man of modest means at his birth. When he graduated from high school in the public schools of Georgia and went to the Georgia Institute of Technology, better known as Georgia Tech, he graduated with a debt and of modest means, but with great values, great principles. The story about the flowers was all because of his mom, who wanted to landscape everything and make it look pretty and beautiful. It proved that it didn't take a lot of money to make things look good. It took a lot of heart. I'm sad today, and all of Georgia's sad today, and they'll be even sadder on Monday when we say goodbye to John Williams. But all of us should hope, and all of us should pray, that all of us have the time in our lives to know somebody as good, as decent, as honorable, as compassionate for their community, and as lover of their country as John A. Williams of Atlanta, Georgia. My good friend. God bless you, John, and God bless the United States of America.